Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So real quick, let's just get some of the very few videos I released this last week right here on the screen, like I've been doing. Apologies for the very high lack of videos, a very low amount of videos. It's been a crazy week. We had sponsored Blade and Soul streams. I've been working on some sponsored Blade and Soul videos. Twitch to YouTube uploader was broken, so I'm still having tons of issues getting some of those clips from Twitch over to YouTube, especially the old Hunters, Just Cause 3. I'm working on all that behind the scenes. Square Enix gave me an early access copy, as well as a lot of other Dream Network members, early access of Just Cause 3, which is hilariously awesome. Hopefully you guys will check out one of these videos, because it's definitely looking like it's going to be worth a purchase when it comes out on Tuesday. Also, we've been preparing for this coming Friday, December 4th. I know a lot of you have Xenoblade going on that day, but I'm going to be spending my time playing Blade and Soul on that day. You're probably wondering how that's possible if you know the schedule. Let's just say we've got a big stream on Friday regarding Blade and Soul with lots of giveaways. So you'll want to be there, especially if you're someone who hasn't yet got your Founders Pack, or you just want to hang out and support the stream. If you can, I would really appreciate you coming by the stream. It lets sponsors, it lets partners know that you guys are interested in special streams like what we have going on Friday. So be sure to be there, and you can come check out some Assassin gameplay. Hopefully you're interested in that, because, well, I know I'm looking forward to it. But I know I spent a lot of time talking last week, and I know you probably don't want to hear me talk as much this week. Just know that we've got a lot of good things on the pipeline, and I'm going to go for a YouTube killing this week with tons of videos with Bloodborne, Fallout, Healer Happy, Bestiary, Diadem Thoughts, a bunch of stuff. So be ready, because your inboxes are going to be flooded. Anyway, let's get started with the actual Q&A part of the Q&A video, shall we? And first question, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, Mr. Happy. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving as well. No, a great Thanksgiving. We've got to be even on this one. I got a few what happened questions. Answer anyone or all if you like them. What happened to the in-game parser Yoshi P said was coming in 3.1? What happened to the flying chocobo racing course? What happened to our favorite detective, his companion, and Greg, his comical side quests? Those are easy. In-game parser, Yoshi P said he didn't want to do a flat-out parser. They wanted to create something called the Beginner's Hall, where you would actually complete challenges. They considered maybe making an actual DPS meter, but they wanted to instead test people with actual encounters where they have to be tested while doing some sort of mechanic. So hopefully we'll have something along those lines coming soon. It's been mentioned again recently, but we don't have an exact date. Didn't say it was coming in 3.1, but they said they wanted to have it in 3.1. What happened to the flying chocobo racing course? They said that it was something they would eventually consider. There was never a guarantee of it, but he said he was very interested in doing it. And what happened to our favorite detective? He's flying off on a sword. It seems that the next set of side story quests, the Scholisticate side story quest, will actually involve Briarden. So maybe that means Hildebrand could potentially be involved, but having Briarden back is definitely a means through which we could see Hildebrand again. So hopefully we will be seeing Hildebrand again, at least if not in 3.1, in 3.15, in 3.2. Next question with the awkward cropping. Yo, Master Hap. Yo, it's Mister. I ain't no one's Master. Question for week 68. So you have a Reese. What level do you see the new relic weapon? I guess you meant to say guess? Do you have a guess what level do you see the new relic weapon? You mean what item level? I think it's going to be 210 as soon as you've upgraded. I think they said there's 5 steps for the first relic quest, and I think the 5th step is going to go all the way up to 210. I'm almost positive it's going to do that. I would be surprised to see it end at 205, but that's possible as well. Next question. Hello, Mr. Happy. Here's a non-wall glitched AV kill. I want my Ninurta sash right now. A few weeks ago, I asked you how to approach a Dragoon about poor DPS on A3 Savage. Unfortunately, that did not go so well. Uh-oh. I did warn you that as nice as you try to be, there's a chance of it backfiring. I sat down and talked to the Dragoon in question, and with the 2 leaders present. I tried to explain it as nicely as possible and offer any help I could. This was met by outrage from the leaders and the Dragoon. For the next 2 weeks, they were on edge and getting offended by anything and everything. Then all of a sudden, the 3 transferred servers without so much as a word, refusing to tell us why online, our out-of-game communication, and told us to ask others why. As a result, they left us high and dry with nowhere to go. I would start a new static, but I don't have the time or patience. The biggest issue at the moment is the lack of caster recruiting. I'm a 208 summoner, 205 black mage, can't even find groups pugging for casters. Currently on Excalibur, I feel like my 2 options at the moment are re-roll for a higher demand job or start over or to Exfer. Sorry for the long rant, just a bit frustrated with the current generations taking on handling things they don't like to hear. Oh, there wasn't really a question here, but I guess I can comment on the situation. In all honesty, if people aren't open to criticism to improve, if there's a legitimate problem within the raid, and both of the leaders and the problem in question are outraged by you wanting to improve the overall playing quality of your raid group, honestly, I wouldn't want to be in a static with them anyway. As far as, other than the fact that they left you high and dry and you can't raid, those are not people that should be in high-end raid groups. You need to be open to criticism. You need to be open to the idea of improving. Especially if I recall correctly, you said the Dragoon was under 1,000 DPS before the Hand of Pain. This may have been another story, because I get stories like this all the time. But that's just the thing. If you have numbers, you say you're only doing this much. You know, we want to help you improve. We don't want to kick you, or I don't want you to be removed. I just want to see improvement. And if they are completely outraged that you say they're not doing enough and you have the numbers to back it up, honestly, you're better off without them, man. I know that it's a tough situation to be in, and I did say that there's no easy way to go about approaching a raid member that they're underperforming by your standards, but unfortunately, that's just kind of where it lands. Two options at the moment: re-roll on a job or start over or exfil or whatever. I'd say give it a little bit more time, because a lot of people are recruiting bards right now. That's what I see on Gilgamesh, at least. But casters are generally somewhat in demand. You may want to go to the recruitment thread on Reddit or on your server forums over on the official forums and see if you can get a group there. So apologies to hear that they were not receptive to it, but honestly, man, if that's how badly it was taken, it sounds like you're better off. Next question. Hey, Happy. Not my first question, but you can have a minion of your choice for your army. Kind of a long question today, so here's a TLDR. Please read the full story off screen. Don't worry, I went ahead and did that because I already recorded myself reading that and then said, oh, let me do that first. So anyway, TLDR, what is generally the most common problem in regards of maximizing raid DPS and endgame rating? Is Alexander Savage too difficult for a casual static? Should we just give up on it? Well, I don't think ever just giving up is the right thing. If people are interested in clearing it and they're willing to improve, you know, unlike the situation we just had in the previous comment, then you should be going for it, as long as it's not causing any ill will. As soon as it starts causing rifts between friends, that's when you may want to consider stopping. It's very easy to get frustrated by a raid member that's not performing to the level you want them to. But that being said, is it too difficult for a casual static? I guess that depends on what you mean by casual. Read your story ahead, and like you said, I think the people in your static have a decent idea of how to play their job. Decent, not that well, not crazy good, but decent enough to the point where you could see them improving a little bit over time. But casual in terms of time, it's doable. Casual in terms of the way you approach the entire game, meaning you're not willing to improve, you're not willing to put time in, you're not willing to hear criticisms, then is very rough. It's definitely not meant for people who are weak of heart or weak of mind. As for problems in regarding maximizing raid DPS, people have this misconception that raid DPS is solely due to the responsibility of a single individual. And while yes, you do need to know certain things about your own job, you know, rotations, openers, how to maximize the amount of time you have on an enemy. If it's only going to be up for 15 seconds and one ability will be better used than another in that 15 seconds that will accrue more DPS, then you need to know to do that. But maximizing raid DPS is a group effort. It's about communicating blood for bloods with your healers. It's about your tanks knowing when it's safe for them to be in their tank stance versus their DPS stance. It's about your DPS knowing how to mitigate damage through their own personal job tools, so that way your healers don't have to be as stressed on them. There's a lot of things that go into communicating and working together with other raid members. Announcing trick attack timings, making sure that you understand when litany is coming up from your Dragoon, or when certain debuffs are going to be available from your Machinist. Knowing these things ahead of time and knowing that maybe if I save this cooldown for 5 seconds instead of popping it here, I'll get to use it for the full duration of this Machinist ability. Or maybe if I hold it for 5 seconds, I can use this one-time big buff attack while trick attack is up. You know, all of those things are things that really help when you're communicating and when people are willing to work together. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, and hopefully you guys can get the issues you have down, take on Alexander, and at the end of the day, be happy with the progress that you've made. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, thanks again for your advice on my question the other week. Do you have any advice for a player not currently in an endgame progression static who wants to get into an endgame static, at least for once 3.2 comes into place? The biggest thing is to try and pug as much as possible, even if they fail over and over and over again. Get the experience, say, I beat this fight up to this point, Or if you happen to have had any previous experience clearing coil, use that as a means of trying to find a new static. Right before 3.2 hits, and even within the first few weeks of 3.2, there's going to be a lot of groups recruiting for statics, regardless of what job you are. You need to take advantage of the first week or two time frame of 3.2 coming out, find a static, lock it in, get the experience you need, and then use that experience to then make sure that you can find other groups when it is applicable. You really need to get in as soon as a new tier is unlocked, because otherwise it gets really, really rough to get in if you don't do that. You end up in the situation you're kind of in now. And I know that you might be thinking, but what if I never beat A4 Savage? I can't even do A5 Savage. I think you won't have to beat A4 Savage to get to A5 Savage. I think they understand that A1 and 2 difficulty is for the broader audience, while A3 and 4 are definitely a huge step up. So forcing someone to beat A4 to get to the much easier A5 just doesn't seem right to me. So I'm hoping they don't go down that path. But that is the best advice I can give you. When 3.2 is about to roll around, go on a hunt for a static, or at least pug everything you can find. People who are trialing, whatever, look for it, take advantage of it. Next question. Hey Haps, first funny pre-rec hapception in the last Monday with you. Today I'll ask you a future of Final Fantasy XIV kind of question, mostly opinion based, so choose your destiny. More skills or more traits? Traits, 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 traits. Traits a million times. We don't need any more skills. And if you're going to give us more skills, either make it so we have a skill tree so there's multiple builds that are possible, so that's why there's more skills, or make it so you can trade out certain skills for new skills. Don't increase the number of skills that we have at any given time. Just adjust the current amount that we have by giving us alternatives to other skills. If that's how they do skills, I'm okay with it. Otherwise, traits, 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 traits. Next question. Hey Happy, finally got around to making an account here, so have some whatever the next tombstone is. Yes, my tombstones of Yoshida. I will have them. What do you think the reason the aetherochemical research facility isn't in any of the roulettes, and which one would you put it in? Pretty much the only time I have seen anyone run it aside from story is for spear bonding, gathering, and crafting accessories. I'll admit from what we saw, it was pretty effective, about 1% a kill. So why is it not in any roulettes? Okay, so let's look at Praetorium. That is probably the biggest example. People hated the fact that Praetorium was in a roulette because it made it so that people that wanted to go slow and do it for the story were mixed with people that wanted to go fast and do it for tombstones. So what did they do? They just didn't put it in a roulette. They're like, no, aetherochemical, it's for that. We'll make sure it gives a lot of law, but otherwise we're not putting it in any roulettes. So now the problem with that is that not enough people run it. So there really was no easy way to do it. If I put it anywhere, it would be main scenario roulette. I mean, it sucks that it'll probably have the same issue that it had before. And the other issue is that it is a 4-man dungeon versus the 8-man dungeon, but it deserves to be in some sort of roulette. Even put it in a level 60 roulette. It just sucks that that's one of my favorite dungeons, and I never get to do it because it's not in any of the roulettes. And I'm not just going to queue for that dungeon on its own, unfortunately. So that's the reason, and I don't know if they'll ever change it, but here's to hoping. Alright, so the next post asks me about strength versus vitality. Now, unlike a lot of these questions that I get about strength versus vitality, this was about the misconceptions in the community about strength tanks versus vitality tanks. Mostly bringing up the stereotype that strength tanks are either harder to heal or are just ignorant to their role, which isn't true. Also, that vitality tanks, the misconception with them is that they're just lazy and unwilling to work harder, which is also not true. Sometimes people just don't want to wear strength accessories, or some people want to, well, just not wear strength accessories. Usually the problem is there's a reason why most people will go vitality. It's because while you're leveling up, you're taught that vitality is for health and you're a tank, so it's easy to make that misconception. And then as a strength, once you learn that strength is really good on tanks, then people criticize you for wearing strength accessories because they think it makes you harder to heal, which it doesn't, by the way. You just have a lower health pool. So as long as your health pool is somewhat adequate and your healer is using their skills properly, you aren't any harder to heal. Now, if you're a strength tank that isn't using defensive cooldowns, then it may be harder. It's definitely going to be harder, especially if you're doing the big pulls. And it's only harder because you have that smaller health pool. But you should be using your defensive cooldowns, and that's a problem whether you're a strength tank or a vitality tank. But the question was, when will the community at large start to accept both strength and vitality tanks? I understand not everyone will jump on board, but when will the majority at least be okay with that, both of them being an option? I was strength tanking on Warrior back in the 2.x series, and it was perfectly okay. Now, though, I'm seeing abuse towards both sides that I believe is entirely unwarranted. Can't we just go back to the way it was? I mean, people are just hard-headed. They're assholes. Whatever you want to call it. People who completely refuse to play with somebody because of their preferred playstyle. Now, granted, preferred playstyle, I don't mean Ice Mage versus Fire Mage. I mean, like, I'm a tank that likes to do... I'm a player that likes to do a lot of damage, and that's, you know... And I'm doing it in content that's more casually approachable, so it should be a little bit easier. Those players should not be getting criticized for playing a way that is both proven effective and faster, you know, and it's not a hindrance to the party. Well, as somebody maybe like, I'm a vitality, you know, I'm not really hardcore, you know, I have my vitality accessories on. I'll do the damage that I can, and I want to contribute to the fight, but I don't feel the need to go out for strength accessories. There's no problem, unless, like, if you're going into, like, regular 4-man content, duty finder content, that extra strength, yes, it's nice, yes, it is optimal, yes, it is playable, but it's not needed to the point where you need to criticize the person. If only you were wearing strength accessories, that would have been easier. That doesn't happen in the duty finder with 4-man content in the old extreme primals like Bismarck and Ravana. There's other problems that you can locate there. So I don't think anyone will ever just flat out accept whether someone is a tank. I do. I usually go, oh, they're full vitality, so I'll need to push a little bit harder. Or, oh, they're full strength. Nice, so this will be a faster run. That's the end of my criticism. It's like, oh, okay. I just understand that that's the kind of player they are, and I'm not willing to drop out of a duty finder just because this person is still learning to play or wants to play their own way, as long as their own way isn't, like, ridiculously bad. Like, for example, oh, I like to heal in cleric stance because it's harder for me. If you said that, that would be ridiculous. Also, people I can't stand to play with are the people who say, I refuse to do this. I had an Astro, I believe it was an Astro, who said he would stop healing just randomly during the fight. And he then, in the middle of the fight, as he was getting killed, types, by the way, I refuse to heal if I see my fellow healer go into cleric stance. And I'm like, that's just ignorant. That doesn't make you a better player. That doesn't make anyone respect you. You're literally just being an asshole. And you're literally just making everything harder on everyone there. Now, granted, if the other person's doing it incorrectly to the point where it's hurting your party, sure, say something. Be like, you know, I think you're in cleric stance too much, you know. I definitely need a little bit more help. Communicate that. But don't just be like, I refuse to do this. Like that tank who said that he, there was a tank who was like, oh, every time I see a healer go into cleric stance, I put on level 22 gear because I want to remind them what they're supposed to be doing. It's like, you're supposed to be a tank, so you're going against what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be absorbing damage. And guess what? That person, they're supposed to be healing you. Are you alive? Yeah, then shut the hell up. Like, that's how I feel about it. If you're a tank and you survive an encounter, stop. Don't be like, hey, healer, stop being in cleric stance. Are you alive? Yes? Then shut the fuck up. That's how I feel about it. It infuriates me when I see people do that specific thing where they refuse to play with somebody because they're playing in a way that is, again, proven optimal, but isn't the way that they think it should be played. Ultimately, I don't think the community will ever be able to accept one or the other side. There are going to be people that are against one side. There's going to be people that are against the other side. Luckily, I'm on the Ether data center, where that is very uncommon because most of the people are on Gilgamesh and are competitive in the endgame area. So I understand that on Primal, it is a much bigger problem. And on some of the other data centers, it can also be a much bigger problem. But you're not going to get people to change. You're not going to get people to accept it unless Yoshi P flat out says it's okay. He's like, I want tanks to wear strength occasionally. I just want it to come at a sacrifice, you know. If they say that, then sure, maybe that's the way that you can do it. But otherwise, you can't change people's minds. People will believe what they want to believe, and that's just how it is. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, you seem to get a lot of tanking questions. Do you think tanking in 14 is not designed properly in a user-friendly way? It seems like we get these questions a lot. It seems pretty simple to me. AoE, hold aggro, survive, buff a little bit, do some damage, you're good to go. I get a lot of tanking questions because of that last topic I covered, that there are multiple playstyles when it comes to that. That's why I get a lot. I think it's designed fine. It just has its basic, I'm a tank, I will perform this role, and then you reach the next skill tier where you're like, oh, well, I can perform this role and do more damage. Just a matter of people getting to that point. Now, here's also a not Final Fantasy XIV specific question. Also, do you think tanks would be better at their job at... Wait. But this is about... oh, I guess you're just talking about MMOs in general. Do you think tanks would be better at their job if enmity was removed from the game and tanks were automatically given aggro? No. That would... Yeah, tanks would be better at their job because their job would be done for them. That literally takes away the base. That's the easiest skill to acquire as a tank, is generating enmity. At least generating enough to not hold aggro. Where the skill is really pulled in is holding that enmity and doing as much aggro and surviving. You don't take away one of the entire points of a tank in that, hey, you know, my job is to hold aggro. Yeah, okay, so your job is done for you. Now what? That's pretty much how it'll end right there. I would never want tanks to automatically be given aggro unless it's part of a mechanic for a fight. That is the only way. Except with one tank swapping ability, that makes it way too easy. That literally removes the baseline skill that tanks need to have. And honestly, at that point, you're going to see way lazier tanks that are playing even worse because they don't even have to pay attention to the order of the skills they're using. And then also you have skills that, while they're meant for tanking, ones that are meant for DPS, it's a no. It's a solid no from me. And yes, I think MMOs will almost always have enmity minus certain fight mechanics where enemies go directly for certain tanks. Next question. Hello, Mr. Happy. It's my first time here, and as much as I'd like to give you an SO bonus like many askers do, I don't know how. So that will be my first question. How exactly do askers give in-game stuff like SOs? It's not, sorry if it's a dumb question. It's a joke. It's an inside joke in the community. No one can actually give me any of those things. They're just saying, wee. You know, they're not saying that. It's not a real thing. It's just a joke. Okay? Don't worry about it. My real question is, do you agree that in general the melee DPS have higher theoretical ceiling and damage output than ranged? Yes. Hands down. On a single target, yes. Although Black Mage and Black Mage can come pretty close, if not surpass it, just because they can guarantee uptime as long as they're playing the fight correctly. Also, you have to keep in mind that Black Mages have the added benefit of having buffs in the form of a Bard, for example, or benefiting from general damage afflictions like Trick Attack and Foes a lot more than the melee DPS do, who are mostly reliant on their own tools or a Machinist in order to get the job done. But on AoEs, melee generally don't do as well, though monks can do phenomenally, and dragoons aren't bad. Ninja is god-awful in AoE. But then black mages and summoners both do really, really well, as do white mages, as do scholars. Even tanks other than paladin do pretty well in AoE. More so than I feel that the melee DPS do. But yeah, they definitely have a theoretical higher damage ceiling, assuming equal skill and gear, than the ranged DPS. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, my question for you isn't really 14 specific, but really a question that could go for all MMOs in general. They'll be using some 14 references. TLDR, what storyline mechanics that could be implemented do you feel would make the players feel as if something is a threat, everything is at stake? Nothing. Unless you're going to go back and make the game like Diablo or something, where it's like hardcore mode and you can lose your character. Or you make it like in terms of story, making it feel where you don't feel like there's going to be an outcome, you would need a permanent outcome of a failure. And if that were the case, that would completely alienate so many people. So I don't even need to read the rest. I mean, I don't feel like there's ever going to be a point where you feel the hero in an MMO, which is a continuous experience. There's no game over screen ultimately. Without a game over screen, I don't feel like that's possible. The game Crowfall might be able to do it to some degree. If I'm thinking of the right game, maybe it's not Crowfall, but where your character is persistent across all the servers, but the game worlds themselves can actually come to a conclusion. That may be a way to do it, but then that means that every time a game comes to a conclusion, you need to join a new game with that same character and perform the same story again and again and again, and it's the only way you get your continuous experience. So I don't think that this is something that works for your standard MMO. People aren't a fan of having a permanent affliction against their account. It doesn't appeal to the wide market. So I'm going to say I don't think anything other than what Crowfall does would work. Alright, so this next question I went ahead and read ahead of time as well. And in this question basically asks why Chemist isn't a job in Final Fantasy XIV, or if it could be a job in 14. Now ultimately I feel that the clear difference between a chemist and an alchemist is an alchemist just makes potions. A chemist makes them on the battlefield. They're usually a little bit more unstable, and they use them on the battlefield. And I'm not saying that can't be done. I imagine that the chemist would almost entirely have to be made of mudras, like the entire job, like basically a lot of combinations, and then you could have failed concoctions and whatnot that would hinder your gameplay. So is it a viable job? I don't want to say no, because I don't want to stifle creativity, but it's kind of along the same lines as Blue Mage, where it's like, how do they do it? How do they make this job usable, you know, where they make potions and use them in combat? And in terms of the way the game world works, where potions are something that takes very careful area, do you have to make a very careful craftsmanship? I wonder how it would even work to have these unstable concoctions, and if it would actually be something that would work properly. And then you also have to question how come they can make potions out of essentially nothing while alchemists actually need the materials in question. And then people will say, well, why don't you just make it so you have to be carrying materials? And I go, this isn't Final Fantasy 11. They're not going to do that. So ultimately, could it happen as a healer or even as a DPS? Absolutely. Do I think it'll happen? No. I think it's too close to what the alchemist is and kind of just calls into question why alchemy is even a crafting class in the first place. So I'm gonna go ahead and say no, I don't see it happening, especially not anytime soon. This would be something that would be way later down the line, if at all. All right, next question. Now, I actually had to skip a lot of questions, and that was mostly because they were generally, do you have any tips for tanking, or should I server transfer? And I can only answer so many of those questions in a video, because ultimately, everyone has that same kind of question, and it ultimately comes down to it being your decision. You know, I can't tell you how to play your game, or how to enjoy it, or what server you need to go to. And most of the time I've made those recommendations in a lot of videos in the previous Mondays. So I skipped quite a few questions because a lot of them were like that. Just keep that in mind, that those questions that are really more on the personal side, they generally have their generic questions with generic answers. So there isn't really a whole lot of wisdom I can offer in that case. So next question. Hey, Mr. Happy, I find that the wait for this patch was too much, and I am not being harsh here, but I think the longer wait was thanks to EU players, and then need for the EU data center. Now the EU player base is still not happy with what they have. The EU want more servers or another whole data center to get away from us mid-core and up players because we make the game community toxic. So yeah, I'm getting tired of this. I almost have what I need for this small section of the patch. 2 out of 3 getting Bard gear from Void Ark, 1 run a week. 4 out of 10 for getting my AF2 gear, ESO gear upgraded with upgrade tokens. By the reading of this, my ESO and Law tomes capped. Currently, Wednesday, November 25th, rank 6 of Vanu Vanu Beast Tribe. I'm mid-core players getting close to feeling like this game is becoming too much like WoW, where the devs break up content that should be done together in smaller chunks and pissing off mid-core and up player base. The hint to this is to look at how most, not if all, the non-world first player base unsub from WoW. I can tell you there aren't 5 million world first players in World of Warcraft, but alright. My question is, should we have had other 2 items in the beginning, not 2-part small patches to help the casual feel more involved? I'm not sure I really understand. Are you asking if we should have had Void Ark in 3.0 and then upgrade tokens, or Vanu Vanu Tribe in 3.0? I don't know. I don't really see any issue with it. The entire point is the formula is the even-numbered patches are generally hardcore progression patches, and the odd-numbered patches are catch-up patches, where people can get loot that they haven't been able to get for quite some time through other means. It opens up other avenues of play, such as the open-world hunt, such as the Diadem. It adds usually some sort of off minigame or storyline like the Scholastic Kit and Lords of Verminion. It's a lot of content that gets added in a pretty short period of time, and now that we're back on a 3 to 3.5 month schedule for the next patch, it shouldn't be too bad again. With the animal weapons coming out in what, 2.5, 3 weeks, probably about that point, as well as a Scholastic Kit side story. I don't think that there's any point in putting more of this in 3.0, because then guess what? If we do that on those patches are going to take 5 months every time, and people are going to be complaining twice as much, because Void Ark being added at that point, yeah, it would have been nice for people initially progressing, but then what would this patch have had? You know, where would the effort have gone into this patch? What would have been in this patch? And then would they have had to take another 2 months to develop extra content for 3.1? I don't think the trade-off of adding those things in to those sections is really worth just being able to do it sooner, I guess. I'm not really sure. So I don't really understand the question, but I'm just going to go ahead and say no, I don't think so. Alright, next question. Hey, Happy, how you doing? How you doing? Thank you for answering my questions last week, and you're welcome for the reminder for the video links. I remembered again this week. Don't worry. Thank you for... Oh, I almost read it again. I have a few quick questions for this week. 1. Which do you think is better, Bard or Machinist? Bard if your healers are DPSing. Reign of Death is invaluable, as well as Foe's Requiem for not only the one caster you probably have, at least one caster, but as well for the healers, for their DPS. And as a ninja, I don't complain about my Rhytons being stronger either. Machinist is great. They have the stun. They have all the CC. They have the foe copycat that isn't as good. They have the melee version of foes with the I don't even remember the physical vulnerability debuff. And then they have the TP and the MP, but not having Rain of Death is a massive, massive loss of raid DPS because your healers are likely going to be missing a lot more. On top of that, if your Black Mage and your healers are putting out enough, foes outweighs it. On top of the fact that Bard, I think, is probably a little bit easier to play, and they have similar playstyles, but the Machinist with the whole ammo system and the Wildfire procs, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that job as well as they do Bard. So I'm going to go ahead and just say I think Bard is technically better, but a good Machinist, a good Bard, either or works ultimately. And if you have no caster, Machinist kind of raises in value just because you don't have a big caster to super benefit from foes. And you now probably have one extra physical DPS to benefit from the hypercharge. So is it hypercharge? I think it's hypercharge, yeah. So it depends, but in the standard raid composition, I like Bard better. And also, next question, I'm interested in playing Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but I keep hearing how hard they are and it turns me off. As long as it's not, I like a challenge as long as it's not too wall head slamming. What game would you recommend? Bloodborne. Bloodborne's combat's a lot faster, so people tend to get into the game a little bit easier. I don't think it's easier than Dark Souls. I think the bosses themselves are more interesting and have more mechanics and more interesting ways to interact with them. But Dark Souls, at times you feel crippled by the movement of the game, which comes with practice. You know, if you practice a lot, you don't feel that way. I definitely feel that Bloodborne is easier to get into as a new player to the Souls series. Or Dark Souls 3 if you want to wait for that. 3, how much HP should a Dark Knight or Paladin have an A4 Savage? About 17 to 18k, somewhere between that. That's where our Warrior, I think, has 17.8 with Deliverance. So he has like 22 or something in Defiance, somewhere along those lines. He uses, I believe, 2 slaying accessories and 3 crafted accessories. Vitality crafted with strength and like other stats and whatnot. So that sounds like about right. All right, we got a couple of questions left, guys, and we're going to wrap it up for the week. Pretty short week, so be sure to ask some questions for next week about whatever you got. Just remember that thing I said about the server questions. Hey, Haps, what's good, bub? Repost from week 66. I'm having a ton of trouble with my static and need advice. We finally made our way to A3 Savage, which is long overdue, not because of the skill level, because of conflicts. No shows, showing up late, leaving early, which forces us to have to find subs more than any other static should have to. Also, we have to replace a lot of members because some have understandable real-life responsibilities. We've gone through 4 white mages, 3 scholars, 5 bards, and I was going to make a tree joke about Christmas, but I decided not to. The issue is that we are constantly forced to find new members or find subs because the select few members are always using IRL excuse, and it's the same people every time showing up late, but this has been going on for months now, so we're starting to honestly get a little salty towards one another. What should I do? The issue has been brought up to our other members. So this kind of falls into the line of those generic questions that I answer, in that you just... I just don't know what advice to give in this kind of situation, because the advice is, again, generic. You know, you need to find people that are consistent. You need to find people. It's not like you literally need to find people that don't have as much real life responsibility, and you need to ask them that ahead of time. Now, of course, things can always come up, but I guess it depends. If it's members, if the people are leaving you because the members that are still in the static are constantly late and whatnot, that's a different story. Then those should be the ones removed. But if you are constantly removing the people that find themselves hard pressed to show up, then it just means that your search criteria for the type of member might be a little too loose. You're not looking deep enough into what kind of player they are and what kind of responsibility they have. It's nice to tell people, yeah, you know, if you have something going on in real life, then we understand that you can't make it. But on these nights, we need a commitment. If we do not get that commitment, I'm lowering the size of it because it was bothering me, then you're not a good fit for this static. It makes it so you don't find as many people, but you don't need to go through as many people as well. That's really the best advice I can give you in this case. Next question. Ayo, Mr. Happy. Oh, and this is the last question, by the way. Ayo, Mr. Happy. Got a question for week 68. I've gotten the macro icons to display my jobs, gatherers, and crafts, but they don't do anything. Do you know how to get them to work? So you just need to know how to program macros in the first place. Macro icon doesn't do anything. You need to actually learn how to do the macro commands. What I recommend you do is go to my YouTube channel, type in, go to search through my videos, click macro, and start watching those videos and start understanding the different commands. Because it just sounds like you don't know how to do the different commands that are available. Or you can even go to Square Enix's site and look at one of their player help guides, and you need to just go through the different macros, the different text commands that are possible, and implement them into your macros. It's a very simple thing to do. Once you know how to do it, you'll say, wow, this is really easy, and then it'll work gloriously for you. But anyway, that's going to be the last question for this Mondays with Mr. Happy. It's a shorter video, which is good because I have a lot of stuff that I need to work on. I was telling you about the start of the video. In fact, even while I'm still recording, I'm checking my emails and I'm checking the progress on some of my uploads. There you go. Your Twitch export to YouTube has failed. Fantastic. I love when my Twitch export to YouTube fails over and over again. It's my favorite. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it. Remember to ask your questions for next week, because next week 69. 69. Giggity. Anyway, so yeah, be sure to ask your questions in the description of the video below. There's a little thread there on the Dream Network forums. You go there. If you've never used it before, you sign up, you ask a question, and boom, you're good to go. Ask one, and I will do my best to answer it next week. Anyway, remember, be at my live stream on December 4th. Even if you're playing Xenoblade, just stop in. Trust me, you'll want to be there. And hopefully, we can have a good time. We get some giveaways, and hopefully, I can get to you a lot of videos this week. Now I'm hungry, so I'm going to go eat. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you all next week. And until then, take care.